Greetings everyone, my name is William DeLong. I am very pleased to be making this video for you about the professional responsibilities of teachers. I hope you all enjoy it. I'm going to address, in my opinion, the three most important responsibilities of a teacher. So the first one is commitment to the students. It's extremely important for us to take the time to understand each student individually and discover what makes them tick. If students can understand what type of learner they are, then at that point it opens the floodgates for them to be able to learn as much as they would like. There's a lot, they're raised and they're taught up to this point, or not necessarily this point, but up to the point that we see them in grade school. What they know is what they have learned, and unless they've had a teacher who has really taught them how to learn and what makes them tick, they're just gonna kind of follow the pack. So it's extremely important for teachers to commit to the students and do everything that they possibly can to be the best teacher that they can be for the students. Number two is collaboration with students, the faculty and staff, fellow teachers, and parents as well. I'll start with teachers. Teachers need to communicate with one another to determine what it is that works. This lesson worked, this lesson didn't work. Why didn't it work? I had great results from this teaching practice or this lesson plan. It really is important for teachers to constantly communicate with one another to determine the best possible practices for students in their classroom. Parents, number two, is one of the most important things, in my opinion. The opening up that dialogue and communicating with the students on their strengths, their weaknesses, creating a plan. It's really important to establish that, and open that line of communication. Because I've said it before several times throughout this class that it really does take a village, and it starts with the student, the teacher, and the parent. Obviously, you get into administration and community, all of those things. But the foundation of student success begins with the teacher, the student, and the parent. So those three lines of communication really are the most important. And then the students, communicating with the students. Students need to understand what it is that they are good at and what it is that they're not good at, and establishing that open dialogue to communicate with them and helping them determine what type of learner they are, as I mentioned before, is extremely important. I personally have a rule that I've always believed in. It's a rule within my house and with my children, is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. I don't believe that there's such thing as a stupid question, because if you're asking questions, you have a willingness to learn. So if it means that a lesson is prolonged because students are asking questions, then I'm okay with that, because that means that they have a willingness to learn. They want to learn the information that you are trying to teach them. So continuing education is the last bullet point, the number three topic that I think is most important in teacher responsibility, in continuing educational and not just education, but personal and professional growth. And this can be done by professional workshops, seminars, anything that really focuses on improving instructional practices. It can also be done by reflection of what worked and what didn't work. Did the students respond? If they did, how can we make it better? If they didn't, how can we change it? Or do we just eliminate it altogether because it's just inefficient? So that's extremely important. Also, researching. There's so many resources available to us as teachers to help us. There's thousands of them. So doing research and figuring out what aligns with your teaching style, what type of teacher do you want to be, how do you choose to teach your class. So there's figuring out what type of teacher you are is one of the most important steps, because if you don't understand what the type of teacher you are, and you just kind of become a robot that goes through the motions, then that's extremely ineffective, and the students are not getting the best out of you. So an example is I for whatever reason decided to look up or research what the smartest countries in the world were. I found that Singapore, Hong Kong, Finland, Japan, those were all the smartest countries in the world based on the research that I looked at. So in looking at that, they all had different teacher responsibilities, different methods, strategies. But it was interesting to see there was one common denominator amongst all of those, and that they put education on the highest of standards. They made it a priority and committed to providing the students with tools to not only become great students, but also independent, responsible citizens moving forward in their lives. I found that extremely interesting. So anyways, just a side note on that. So now I'm going to get into the federal or national, state standards, and national and state standards, excuse me. So for the national standards, there's 5 core propositions. So number 1 is teachers are committed to students and their learning. Number 2, teachers know the subjects they teach and how to teach those subjects to the students. 3, teachers are responsible for managing and monitoring student learning. 4, teachers think systematically about their practice and learn from experience. And number 5, teachers are members of learning communities. So those are kind of vague standards, which I personally like, because they really allow the states and the local districts to establish curriculums that adapt to that area the best. So to get into the state standards, in I think it was 1990. Don't quote me on that. They established the CSTP, and that's just basically a group of individuals that adopted in California what are our current standards. So in 2009, they established 6 standards. Number 1 is engaging and support all student learning. Number 2, creating and maintaining effective environments for student learning. 3, understanding and organizing subject matter for student learning. Number 4, planning instructional and designing learning and experiences for all students. 5, assessing students for learning. 6, developing as a professional educator. And that's 6, obviously. Got ahead of myself there, sorry. So as you can see, the standards are pretty similar. California standards obviously line up with the national standards. California has expanded on it a little bit, but they do really allow the freedom for the local school districts to implement their own practices as long as they're in line with Common Core standards. So, depending upon what district you're in is, whether you're going with Go Math or, I think they've eliminated Saxon Math at this point, but there could be some districts that are continuing to use that. So To move on to the next topic, which is continuing professional development. Education is evolving, as history has shown, and we found out throughout this class. It's has its ups and it's has its down. But I strongly believe that as teachers, we have an obligation to evolve with education. And that way we ensure the best possible practices that we can give our students. So I know I briefly touched on this at the beginning of the video, but attending workshops and seminars, staying in constant communication with teachers, and not only just your local school, but in your district and throughout the state, determining what works, what doesn't work, effective, developing a list of effective teaching practices is only going to help us. So continual growth as educators is huge. My personal belief is that we don't ever settle for average. I think that it's imperative that we lead by example. So if myself as a teacher is settle for average, then my students are going to settle for average, the parents are going to settle for average, colleagues are going to begin to settle for average, and as we're better than that. We're better than that as teachers. So if the teachers themselves and the community of teacher refuses to settle for average, the sky is really the limit. And we can do that by simple things like attending workshops, seminars, staying on top of effective practices, using all of the tools that are available to us, so we can equip ourselves to be the best that we can be for these students. So if we become complacent, then we're allowing our students to become at risk of dropping below the curve. So technology, I'm going to discuss now, and there's both advantages and disadvantages with technology. I'll start with the disadvantages, and I think the first one is that it's not really a level playing field across a state when it comes to technology. At the end of the day, it comes down to money. You have your low-income districts that don't have funding. They don't have the funding to get the iPads and the smart boards and the computers and overhead projectors. I mean, they're just trying to they're struggling just trying to keep books in the classroom. So that's a huge disadvantage as far as technology goes. The second one is the time that it takes. Some of these technological advancements that we've made, they take some time to learn. And the responsibility of a teacher is extremely time consuming. So extra work can be extremely unappealing, and on top of having to maintain all of the other duties that go along with being a teacher. And then also malfunctions. Just imagine creating a plan, got a lesson plan set up, and it malfunctions. So that can be a huge disruption to the classroom. Just a waste of time trying to make it work. If it doesn't work, what is your backup plan? So again, a disadvantage as far as technology goes. Now some of the advantages are that there are some really awesome tools that can help us as teachers become more efficient. There's smart boards, there's web-based resources, there's overhead projectors, there's going back to the web-based resources is Watch Know Learn, which is a fantastic website. You could type in anything and it provides videos of instruction, and thousands of videos, and they've all been screened. A really, really good resource for teachers. And also, our world is becoming dependent on technology. So why would we not introduce and educate our students with technology? They need to learn basic keyboarding skills. They need to learn basic computer skills. They need to know how to operate electronic devices. So the longer that we hold them back from that, uh, the more we're hurting them as far as their development as they grow into the real world. So to conclude everything, I think it takes a certain type of person to become a teacher. It doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. At the end of the day, to be an effective teacher, there has to be a commitment, not only to your personal beliefs, but to your employer, the district that you work in, the community values, the district values, and responsibilities that they require. Working collaboratively with teachers, continuing to grow personally, not settling for average, constantly reflecting, and having a good understanding of the national and state standards are all things that help us become the best teachers that we can be. We need to continue to keep growing and learning from other teachers, reflecting on past instructions, and utilizing our resources. There's thousands and thousands of them out there for us. So we can utilize those, even if our school has no money. I talked about Watch Know Learn. That's a huge resource. As long as you have internet access, you have resources that can help us assist any instructional methods. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I was able to let you in on my personal beliefs about teachers and their responsibilities. And I will leave you with this last quote, to remember to not settle for average. Do not settle for average. We're better than that, and our students deserve better than that. So I hope you all make it a great day and enjoyed the video. Bye.